have to stop and reread this and think some more. So, yeah, just fabulous stuff. Mm. Right, right. Well, oh, I've got the signal. Hi. Hello, Facebook people. We are here. You are there. So I guess that means we're going to start. So welcome. We missed last week. Did we miss last week? Yes. Okay. It's all a bit of a blur. So we missed last week, but we will not miss today. Um, we're gonna we're gonna get into this, but I guess we'll pray first. Is what we'll do. I'll wait for a couple of people. I won't use your names because we're on Facebook Live. So then they'll be like, "Oh, I know those people." Yeah. Yeah. One of these times, I'm going to get Dan to put the camera on you, or just let me have it here, and just selfie and then anyway. No, Joyce is like bad idea. Okay, I'll take your advice on that one. All right, welcome here. Let me pray. God in heaven, thank you that we're interested in your word. Thank you that, God, you help us overcome our sometimes malaise about your word and learning and knowing you. And God, maybe that's just me, but I thank you that your spirit moves me forward and you urge me to read the words of truth. And I pray that as we do that today, that God, you would help us understand a little bit more what's going on here in Job, and that would help us to understand who you are and then who we are before you. So God, thank you and lead us. I ask in your name, Jesus. Amen. Okay, so Job 32 and 33, we're going to look at Elihu. I had wanted to start with some poetry. I will try to remember to do that next week um, because that would just get you all crying and emotional. And I just really wanted you in that, that state of I could do whatever I wanted to after that, or not. Not saying I'm trying to manipulate you, but okay, wait, this is live. Okay, let's start over. We're going to talk about Elihu today. Elihu has 4 speeches. Um, generally. 32 and 33 are his first speech. 34, second one. 35, his third one. And 36 and 37 constitute his 4th speech. It's more of a monologue. Nobody ever answers Elihu. And Elihu is a bit of a mystery. Where does he come from? Why is he there? What's his purpose? Because it is a little bit hard to discern his purpose and hard to figure out why did we stop the dialogue, go into Job's monologue, and why do we have Elihu rather than go straight into God? So Elihu really serves as someone who prepares the way or the arrival of God. Elihu, the name Elihu is virtually the same as Elijah. In fact, some would argue that Elihu and Elijah are really just like Bob and Robert, okay, or James and Jim. Pretty much the same thing. Elijah means my God is Jehovah, or Jehovah is God of me, if you will. Elihu means the same thing. Eli, we see that in the Gospels, right? Jesus says, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. Eli is my God, my God. So Elijah and Elihu, my God is Jehovah, or Jehovah is God of me, however you want to put that. So we discover that Elihu really is being used in the same way Elijah was used. So we need to figure that out. Malachi 4, 4 and 5, if you want to turn there. It's the last book of the Bible. Yeah, I just had to check myself there. It's the last book of our English Bible. Let me put it that way. Chronicles is the last book of the Hebrew Bible. Of the Old Testament. Yes, thank you for that correction. Yes, of the Old Testament. Yes. I couldn't figure out why you were looking at me that way. And you're like, come on, come on. Right, right. So the Old Testament, Malachi is the last book. Malachi 4, 4 and 5. So by this time, Elijah is long past, okay? Malachi is one of the last prophets. And he says in verse 4 and verse 5 of Malachi 4, 4 and 5, remember the law of my servant Moses, the decrees and laws I gave him at Horeb for all Israel. See, I will send you the prophet Elijah before that great and dreadful day of the Lord comes. And we can finish off. And he will turn the hearts of their fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers, or else I will come and strike the land with a curse. So the key there is Elijah is the prophet that's going to come before the day of the Lord. So what are we talking about, the day of the Lord? When is Elijah coming? Well, if you look at Matthew 11, 13 through 15, Jesus interprets that for us. Matthew chapter 11, verses 13 through 15. Matthew 11, 13 through 15. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. And if you are willing to accept it, he is the Elijah who was to come. He who has ears, let him hear. So Jesus is referring back to Malachi 4, 5. And Jesus says about John the Baptist is the one who has come in the name of Elijah. John the Baptist is, in a sense, the new Elijah. Not that we're doing any replacement theology, but John the Baptist comes in the same manner that Elijah came. Okay? Elijah came to Israel, and Elijah was a prophet in the order of Moses. It's not insignificant that Moses goes to Sinai, and up on Sinai he sees fire and storm and earthquake. Elisha goes up to Sinai, and Elisha sees fire and storm and earthquake. Okay? So Elijah is the same order of prophets as Moses is. He's Moses' successor, if you will. And just as Moses brought the word of the Lord and prepared the Israelites for God's coming, Elijah prepared the Israelites for the coming of the Lord. Ahab and Jezebel were king and queen, and they led the whole nation into Baal worship and idol worship of various idols. And so Elijah comes along and says, prepare to see God, because he's coming. And they go up on Mount Carmel, and the fire of God rains down and licks up all of the offering and water and whatnot. And Elijah says, choose for yourself who you'll serve. Like, is Jehovah God or is Baal God? Tell me what you've just seen. And so Elijah's the one who says, Jehovah's my God. Jehovah is God. His very name says that. And he stands in front of Israel his whole life saying, Jehovah's God, not Baal, not Ashtaroth, not anybody else, Jehovah's God. And he prepares Israel to know God. John the Baptist does the same thing for New Testament Israel. John the Baptist comes and he prepares the way of the Lord. John the Baptist is preaching a repentance for forgiveness of sins, a baptism of repentance, and preparing for the day of the Lord. Often, the day of the Lord is used in various ways, but one of the ways in which the day of the Lord is used is the coming of Christ, the day of the Lord. It's also used in Revelation as that great and terrible day, or however you want to interpret it, depending on which side you're on, kind of thing. But there is another day of the Lord that's coming when he returns. But it's always in reference to the return of Jesus or the coming of Jesus. So John the Baptist is preaching and preparing for the coming of the Messiah, for the coming of God. Elijah prepared for the coming of God. Moses prepared for the coming of God. And so Jesus says, if you're willing to accept it, John the Baptist is a fulfillment of the prophecy of Malachi. John the Baptist is the Elijah, coming in the spirit of Elijah to prepare the way of the Lord. And so Jesus, one of the ways we know Jesus is God is because the coming of Elijah, or John the Baptist. John the Baptist, Elijah, Moses, they all prepare for the day of God to show up, and Jesus shows up. So Elihu, in the same way, is preparing for the appearance of God. The poet just does a marvelous job of putting Elihu in there with almost the identical name of Elijah. And he's using Elihu's speeches to prepare us for God's coming. Here's Elihu. That's like Elijah. What did Elijah do? Maybe this is what's going on with Elihu, which is what's going on with Elihu. So Elihu's not only repeating what he's heard. Elihu's going to introduce some other, at least one other argument into the equation. But in doing so, he clearly prepares the way for God to show up. And that's why after he speaks, there's no answer from Job. There's no answer from the three friends. It's boom, here's God. And God shows up. So let's start reading a little bit. We're only going to really do 32 and 33. 32. So these three men stopped answering Job because he was righteous in his own eyes. But Elihu, son of Barachel, the Buzite, of the family of Ram, became very angry with Job for justifying himself rather than God. He was also angry with the three friends because they had found no way to refute Job and had yet condemned him. Now, Elihu had waited before speaking to Job because they were older than he. But when he saw that the three had nothing more to say, his anger was aroused. Elihu is given the most information about his genealogy of all the friends, which is interesting because evidently Elihu was there the whole time, but we only know at the beginning of the book that there were three, but evidently Elihu was four. And who knows, maybe there were others. We don't know that for sure. But we know more about Elihu, about his patriarchy or his genealogy than any other. It says his father was a descendant of Ram. Ram was also was a descendant of David. So if it's the same Ram, which we don't know, but if it is, then we are come to the conclusion that the author seems to want us to know that Elihu is an Israelite, whereas the other three were not. Is that important? I don't know. Not sure, but it seems like there's something significant about the fact that we know more about Elihu's lineage than we do Eliphaz, Zophar, and Bildad. It's curious that Elihu is angry at both Job. He's angry at Job for Job's self-proclaimed righteousness. He thinks that Job shouldn't be so high on himself, I guess, or so big on himself, or or think that he's such a righteous guy as he claims. But he's also angry with the three friends because the three friends could not find a way to make Job see the truth of the situation. And so he feels like the friends have wasted their breath, and he feels like Job has wasted his breath. And he comes along and feels like he sees the situation more clear than anybody else. He puts himself in the position of an arbiter. You remember back in, Job 9, where Job says, I wish there was an arbiter between me and God, someone who could work with me and God, that could stand between us and help us see this thing correctly. Elihu believes he can be that person. Elihu seems to step in and say, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. You guys are kind of close, but let me put it all together for you. And so Elihu is, in some senses, the courtroom lawyer, right? If I could go to court with him, Job says, I would take him to court and I would prove my case. And Elihu steps in and says, okay, I'll be your lawyer. Let's go to court. I will plead your case. I will put you and God together. I'll show you how this works. So he takes somewhat of or he tries at least, to occupy a middle ground between Job and his friends. And he does represent a bit of a different attitude towards wisdom. And we see that right away, actually. We see that in verse 6. So Elihu, son of Barachel, the Buzite, said, I am young in years, and you are old. That is why I was fearful, not daring to tell you what I know. I thought age should speak, advanced years should teach wisdom. But it is the spirit in a man, the breath of the Almighty, that gives him understanding. It is not only the old who are wise, not only the aged who understand what is right. Therefore, listen to me, and I'll tell you what I know. So in that culture especially, it was respectful to let your elders speak first. You never cut them off. You never interjected. You kind of raised your hand, and if they never said, okay, you can speak, you never spoke. So there's Elihu in that situation, respecting his elders, listening to Eliphaz, listening to Zophar, listening to Bildad, listening to Job. And he doesn't say anything. He waits until they're all exhausted. He waits until they're done. Right? The three men stopped answering Job because he was righteous in his own eyes. They'd had enough. We remember by the third set of speeches that they were just really hammering on Job. And Job, you're not listening. You're useless. You are a sinner. You don't know what you're talking about. You have no wisdom. We have all the wisdom. If you don't want to listen to us, fine, then we're done with you. And Job kind of says, well, whatever, you can be done with me. Like, you guys know more than I do? Come on. You don't know any more than I do. I know exactly what you guys know. You guys are useless to me. I don't even want to hear you anymore. So they stop. So the silence at the beginning of the book was good, but here it's not so good. So there's Elihu going, okay, I guess it's my turn. And he says, I didn't say anything at first because I recognized that I was the youngest, so I waited my turn. I had respect for you. Yet I want you to know something, he says. You're not any more wise than me because you have age, which is shocking, right? I mean, that's a crazy thing. That's a pretty, what's the word? Brash. That's a pretty brash thing for him to say. Like, this is youth talking. Like, you guys, your wisdom isn't any better than my wisdom. It's not necessarily given by age. Just because you're older than me doesn't mean you're wiser than me. It just means you're older than me. And clearly what I've been hearing certainly doesn't mean you're wiser than me. And he says, your wisdom's failed. He says, it's the spirit in a man, the breath of the Almighty, that gives him understanding. It's not only the old who are wise, and not only the aged who understand what is right. So he's being pretty brash here. He's being kind of cocky, actually, saying, okay, you old guys. I've heard what you had to say, and it doesn't make any sense, and I think maybe your age hasn't helped you. You're just old, not necessarily wise. But I know wisdom too. I might be younger than you, and you might look down on me, but I know wisdom because wisdom comes from God, not just from age. And of course, we could read James 3:1, right? No, 1:3, maybe it is, or 5. 3 doesn't sound right. Let's go to James 1:5, I think it is. James 1:5. If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. So, Elihu's right, at least to a degree, that age doesn't make you wise alone, and youth doesn't make you unwise alone. It's God who gives us wisdom. So the 30-year-old could be just as wise as the 80-year-old. Not with life experience, obviously, but with God's wisdom. Okay? And I think that's part of the reason where, Paul tells Timothy not to let anybody look down on you because you're young. Like Timothy, you might be younger than many of the people you're preaching to and teaching, but Timothy, you know God. And wisdom comes from God, and you have a gift from God. And just because you're younger doesn't mean you don't know as much or should feel like you don't know as much. You might not have experienced as much of life, but you've experienced as much or more of God, and wisdom comes from God. So he's right in that sense, but he is pretty cocky to say, hey, your wisdom has failed you, you old guys. You're pretty much just old. Like, how to make friends, huh? So he says, my wisdom's not going to be like yours. Let's keep reading. Verse 10, therefore I say, listen to me. I too will tell you what I know. I waited while you spoke. I listened to your reasoning. While you were searching for words, I gave you my full attention. But not one of you has proved Job wrong. None of you has answered his arguments. Elihu's going to claim that he can. That's his point in saying that. You guys didn't do it, but I can. So do not say in verse 13, we have found wisdom. Let God refute him, not man. But and he's believes that he's going to be the one that God's going to refute him through because he's just said, look, I have wisdom from God, so shut up and listen to me. I'll tell you what God says. 14, but Job has not marshaled his words against me, and I will not answer him with your arguments. Like, my wisdom's not going to be your wisdom. My arguments are not going to be your arguments. I've heard your arguments. I've listened to them. I've paid attention. I took notes. I'm hearing your reasoning. I think you guys fall way short. You don't. Your wisdom hasn't cut it clearly. Job, your wisdom hasn't cut it either. Job, he's not marshaled his words against me. Like, they haven't changed anything I believe. They haven't changed any of the wisdom that I have. Job hasn't led me to believe something different and change me. So I'm not going to answer Job with words that you guys use because you didn't do it. Verse 15, they are dismayed and have no more to say. Words have failed them. Must I wait now that they are silent, now that they stand there with no reply? I too will have my say. I too will tell what I know. For I am full of words, and the spirit within me compels me. Inside I am like bottled up wine, like new wineskins ready to burst. I must speak and find relief. I must open my lips and reply. I will show partiality to no one, nor will I flatter any man. For if I were skilled in flattery, my maker would soon take me away. So there's Elihu saying, I've heard all of you guys, and none of it's impressive. And you're all missing it. And you guys don't know God. But I know God. I have wisdom too. And I'm going to tell you what my wisdom is. I can't wait any longer. I know I'm the youngest guy, but I can't wait any longer. If I don't speak, I'm going to blow up. because I have all this bottled up within me. I have the answers. I know what I'm talking about. So let me do this. Verse 19, the image of bottled up wine, like new wineskins ready to burst. So when they would make their wine, they would put it in wineskins, right? And then if you just put the cap on the wineskin but didn't let it breathe, it's going to blow up. That's what he's saying. I can't keep this capped in. This is bubbling within me. This is churning within me. This has got to come out. I have got to blow up, or I've got to speak up or I'll blow up, kind of thing. So he's compelled to speak. He's going to burst if he doesn't. He wants to speak what he knows of wisdom into the situation. And so we come to 33. So 32 is an interesting chapter. 32 just tells us about Elihu and about his, in some regards, his arrogance, his, thinking he knows it all. It's, it's similar to, and it could be confidence. I think we're going to see it's a little bit overzealous confidence. I think it's the confidence of youth that often comes across as cockiness and too sureness, right? Right? I mean, I remember my Bible college days, and you come back and you've just studied all this stuff and you know everything there is to know. And oh man, I'm going to tell everybody what they don't know because you guys don't know anything compared to what I know. And only to find out that I was just a jerk. Right? I mean, sure, I was on some sort of fire, but yeah, it certainly wasn't the Spirit of God within me saying, you got to say this. Right? And you got to wonder about Elihu. Is Elihu in the same situation? Because Elihu's kind of wants to claim it's the Spirit of God within me that I have to say this. God wants me to say this. Does he? Right? Maybe it's Elihu's own pride and overconfidence that wants him to say this. So I think that's partly what's going on. I think partly that's why Elihu is the youngest of them, because there's this, the folly of youth, in a sense. Quick to speak, quick to anger, slow to think. Don't trust anybody over 30 attitude. Yeah, that's right. We don't have that anymore. Now what is it now? Don't trust anybody over 60? I don't know. Not sure. 50? Sorry, Joyce. 45. Sorry. Yes. Oh, my bad. I'm not functioning on all cylinders. Without my poetry, I'm lost. So we find out a few things about Elihu, and he's raring to go. He's just come back from Bible college, and he's going to tune him in. Here are the answers. So Job chapter 33. But now, Job, listen to my words. Pay attention to everything I say. I am about to open my mouth. My words are on the tip of my tongue. My words come from an upright heart. My lips sincerely speak what I know. He's echoing all these things Job said, right? It's kind of disrespectful. Here, Job, you think you're righteous? These come from, I'm righteous also. You want me to pay attention to you? Pay attention to me. I'm going to open my mouth, and you're better listen, because I have some things that I'm upright too, and I have wisdom too, and I'm sincerely speaking what I know. And here he plays the God card. The Spirit of God has made me. The breath of the Almighty gives me life. Answer me then, if you can. Prepare yourself and confront me. I am just like you before God. I too have been taken from clay. No fear of me should alarm you, nor should my hand be heavy upon you. He is patronizing Job. You believe it's conviction. All right. Well, so far, and it could be. I think he's somewhat patronizing. I think he's, saying, "Hey, Job, you think God made you? Well, God made me too. Job, answer me if you can. Like, you think I can't answer you? I don't think you can answer me. I'm just like you, Job. Well, you're no different than me. You're no better than me. I too have been taken from clay. It's kind of like saying, you're taken from clay. I'm taken from clay. So you shouldn't have to fear me. You shouldn't have to be alarmed. Um, my hand won't be heavy upon you. Like that's just another way of saying, yeah, here goes, Job. Wait till you hear me. Like, don't worry about what you have to hear. We're just the same, aren't we? I find that to be a little bit cocky. You find it to be you like this kid. Okay, well, you're more of a mentor than I am, I guess. You're a Barnabas and I'm less than a Barnabas. You're like, I could do something with this kid, and I just don't want to take him along. Verse 8. But you said in my hearing, I heard the very words. I am pure and without sin. So he's quoting Job. I heard you say, I am pure and without sin. I'm clean and free from guilt. Yet God has found fault with me. He considers me his enemy. He fastens my feet in shackles. He keeps close watch on all my paths. So he's quoting Job. Verse 12, but I tell you, in this you are not right, for God is greater than man. Why do you complain to him that he answers none of man's words? For God does speak, now one way, now another, though man may not perceive it. And we'll continue in a minute. So Elihu's going to take up Job's arguments. There's three main arguments that he's going to take up. Verse 9, the main argument, I'm pure and without sin. So he's going to say, I heard you say that you're pure and without sin. Let's talk about that. That I'm free, I'm clean and free from guilt. Well, Job never claimed that. Job never claimed that he was without guilt and without sin and pure. What he claimed was that he was not outstanding in sin and continuing in sin and therefore deserving of what he was getting. That's what he claimed. I am righteous, he said. I'm not without sin because numerous times he says, yeah, I wish God would just forgive me and we get on with it. Job 7:21. Sure hope I have these references right. There are days when I don't. He says, why do you not pardon my offenses and forgive my sins? For I'll soon lie down in the dust. So he knows he's a sinner. He's not claiming to be without sin. So he's never claimed to be pure and without sin, but he's claimed to be without such egregious sin that such an egregious suffering should come upon him. He says, I don't deserve what I'm getting. If it's true that the righteous are blessed and the wicked are cursed, then I don't fit in this pattern because I'm not wicked. I am righteous. So he's not saying I'm pure and without sin, I don't have a sinful nature. He's just saying I'm in the righteous camp. But you put me in the wicked camp because of what's happening to me, but I'm telling you that I'm not that wicked that this should be happening to me. I get it if I break my toe or something. Okay, I accept that. I'm a sinner. It should happen to me. I get that. But for me to lose my whole family and everything I own and my health, I'm not that bad of a sinner. So Elihu actually gets this wrong. He's listening to Job and he says, you said I'm pure and without sin and I'm clean and free from guilt. No, Elihu, you might have been listening and paying attention, but you wrote the notes wrong. You interpreted what he said wrong. Okay? Because we still have this tension of Deuteronomic theology, the good are blessed and the evil are cursed, with, come on now, with the other type of wisdom, reflective theology, if you want, that says, no, bad things happen to good people, and good things happen to bad people, and that's just life. And I don't know how to put it all together, Because it's true on the one hand that God blesses the upright and curses those who aren't. That is true. But it's also true that good people, righteous people have bad things that happen to them. And it's also true that bad people succeed in life and never seem to have any cares in life. So how do you put all that together? And so Elihu really doesn't know how to put all that together. So he is misquoting Job as saying, well, I can refute that. You do have sin. You're not free from guilt. So Job, what you're getting makes sense. And we'll see that later on. The second argument that Job uses is found in verse 10. God has found fault in me and treats me as an enemy. He shackles me up. He's keeping a close watch on my paths to do me harm. And that is true. That was one of his arguments. So Elihu gets that one right. Job constantly says, God's finding fault with me where there is no fault. I don't deserve this amount of suffering. I admit there's fault in my life, but I always repent of that. I always make the sacrifices weekly. I'm always trying to be right with God. So God's against me. God's finding fault where there is no fault. God's shackled me. God's against me. God's my enemy. Why does he treat me as an enemy? And so Elihu's going to deal with that question. And then his third argument that he's going to deal with is verses 12 through 13. Why do you complain to him in verse 13 that he answers none of man's words? For God does speak. Job's complaint was, God doesn't speak to me. God doesn't listen to me anymore. God's abandoned me. God doesn't like me. He doesn't speak to me. He doesn't listen to me. He says he'll never leave me, but he has. I pray and I pray and there's no answer. So God's just left me. God doesn't care about me anymore. I wish I had never been born because it'd be better than not being cared about by God. I would have avoided all of this suffering, especially the suffering of knowing that God doesn't speak to me anymore and he's my enemy and I don't understand it and it tears me up inside and I wish I just wasn't born and I wouldn't have had to deal with any of this. And so Elihu gets that right. That is one of his answers. So the three arguments that Job makes, I'm pure and without sin, God's found fault with me and treats me as an enemy, and God does not speak to me anymore, Elihu is going to take them up in reverse order. And he's going to do that throughout right through to chapter 35, actually. And we might get into a bit of that today, seeing as how I'll have 8 minutes to fill. So let's take up the first one. Elihu takes them up in reverse order. The third argument that Job made was, God doesn't speak to me anymore. God's not there anymore. He doesn't listen to me anymore. He's just abandoned me. Verses 14 through 30, essentially almost the rest of the chapter, he deals with that. He says in verse 14, God does speak, now one way, now another, though man may not perceive it. So God speaks in various ways. It's not just one way in which God speaks. He can speak, and he'll get into it, but he can speak in dreams. He can speak through his word. He can speak through other people. He can speak through creation. He can speak in many ways. And even when he is speaking, sometimes we as mankind can't perceive it. So it's not that God's not speaking, it's sometimes that our ears just can't perceive his words. Or we are expecting him to speak in one way because that's the way he's always spoken to me, but he's chosen a different way to speak. And we're saying, no, God, if you want to speak to me, you've got to speak to me the way I expect you to speak to me. I'm not open to anything else because I want you in the box that I have and I want to control you. And if you're going to speak to me, you don't use that tone with me, right? Kind of thing. I want you to speak in a certain way. And Elihu says in verse 15, we just might not perceive it. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls on men as they slumber in on their beds, he may speak in their ears and terrify them with warnings, to turn a man from wrongdoing and keep him from pride, to preserve his soul from the pit, his life from perishing by the sword. Or a man may be chastened on a bed of pain with constant distress in his bones, so that his very being finds food repulsive and his soul loathes the choicest meal. These are echoes of what we've heard Job say, right? Job has said, I despise food. It repulses me. Even what I used to think was the choicest of meals, I don't even want to look at anymore. It makes me sick. I just can't eat anything. He goes on. His flesh wastes away to nothing, and his bones, once hidden, now stick out. His soul draws near to the pit, and his life to the messengers of death. Yet, if there's an angel on his side as a mediator, 1 out of 1,000, to tell a man what is right for him, to be gracious to him and say, spare him from going down to the pit, I have found a ransom for him, then his flesh is renewed like a child's. It is restored as in the days of his youth. He prays to God and finds favor with him. He sees God's face and shouts for joy. He is restored by God to his righteous state. Then he comes to men and says, I sinned and perverted what was right, but I did not get what I deserved. He redeemed my soul from going down to the pit, and I will live to enjoy the light. God does all these things to a man, twice, even 3 times, to turn back his soul from the pit. The 29 twice and 3 times is just a poetic device to say God tries to speak over and over and over in many ways because he wants us to know him. It's in a sense, the equivalent of 1 Timothy 4:10, right? God doesn't want anyone to perish, but all to come into everlasting life. Or 1 Peter 3:9, God is not slow in keeping his promises, as some perceive slowness, but he is patient, wanting all people to come to salvation. So God is constantly speaking through many ways, various ways. Maybe it's in a dream at night. Maybe it's in a vision. Maybe it's, he even talks about an angel, or an angel in Hebrew, angel and messenger are the same thing. So it's a messenger of some sort. Could be an angelic messenger, could be a human messenger, but God's always sending messages to us. And interestingly enough, Elihu says sometimes God sends pain to speak to us. That's the first time we find that in this book. None of the other guys said anything about that. All the other guys said, pain means you're wicked. Pain means God's against you. Suffering means you've done something wrong. God's against you. Only the wicked suffer. Elihu comes along and says, God uses suffering. So not all suffering is because you're wicked. Not all suffering comes because it's a punishment of some sort. Suffering comes because maybe you're right before God, and he wants to keep you right before himself. Right? I mean, that's an amazing concept that I think we probably don't even talk about or understand too much today. But pain, suffering, hardship, chastening, God uses that to draw us to himself. When things go wrong, doesn't mean God has gone wrong. Sometimes it means God is going right for you. Not everything that goes wrong for us is bad and wicked. Not everything that we suffer from is from Satan. God uses hardship. God uses trial. God uses pain. God uses ill health. God uses catastrophes to show up and help us open our eyes to see him in different ways that we didn't see before. Sometimes our trouble is that we are still like Job and his friends, where we know God and we know he works this way and he's always done that, and so this is the way I expect him. And God's saying, how much louder do I need to yell at you? Right? It's A.W. Tozer who said that, I don't have a right word for word quote, but A.W. Tozer says, pain is God's megaphone to speak into our lives. And that's true. If you were to, okay, I'll say it this way. I took a course, and it was not a course from a seminary or anything, but it was a different kind of course, kind of like when we put on our seminars here, sort of thing. At any rate, what we did was we had this great big piece of paper. It was probably half the size of half of this table, and we got different colored sticky notes. I don't know how many. I still have the thing, so I could probably go check. I think we had 4 different colors of sticky notes. And one sticky note was highlights, things that you remember that are important to you, that stick out on your life. Write them on the yellow sticky note. And we drew a timeline of our life. And fortunately, I did it when I was younger, so I didn't have to, it's not as long as a timeline. I didn't have to remember as much. And so we put the yellow sticky notes on there. And then pink sticky notes were things like joyous times in your life. Maybe not necessarily the important, but joyous times. My 7th birthday party when Mom made the cake and she covered it in Smarties and put quarters inside, and and she was so worried that one of my friends was going to swallow the quarter and die, and we would be in the poorhouse because we'd be sued, and us kids would be in foster care, and all that was I didn't know all that was going on until after. To me, it was like, woohoo! What did I bite into? Yeah, I got a quarter. I don't know what you'd have to put in today. Gold pieces, I suppose. I don't know. Then there were blue sticky notes, and I don't quite recall. Oh, blue sticky notes were people in your life. The important people in your life. Mentors, people who shape your life, whether, your parents, your brothers, your friend, teacher, whatever it was. And you put those on your. And then the last color sticky notes, I don't know, they might have been green, but whatever they were. Events in your life that were hard, times of suffering, times of pain, times of trouble, things in your life that you look back on. And so we took a long time and put those all in the timeline and put the sticky notes on. And so you're all done. And you put this thing on the easel or whatever we had. And you look at it and you step back. And you realize that more life-changing events happen because of the negative and the suffering and the pain that was brought into your life. And I couldn't believe that. I mean, I was probably 40, and I was shocked at the painful memories and the painful times in my life. And as I looked at those were as significant, and maybe some of them more significant than the birthday party and the good things that happened. The birthday party was joyous, but it didn't change my life. But that painful event that I went through at whatever, that changed my life. And I think Elihu's getting at this. Pain is God's megaphone to get our attention. Not because we're bad, but because he wants us to go deeper with him. And the New Testament bears that out. Peter talks about God chastens us as a father, or disciplines us as a father disciplines his son. There's discipline. And sometimes that comes out in pain, in suffering, in hardship, in even ill health sometimes. So, Elihu moves us along in this process, something that the other three didn't ever come to conclude, Elihu begins opening up this new thought. Wait, what? How can that be? Deuteronomic, mm-hmm. Retributive theology. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's, this is the whole point of the book of Job, really, right? Because we have Deuteronomic or retributive theology says, and Proverbs bears that out too, right? God is for those or he is for those who are for them. God is for those who are for him and against those who are against him. And that's true. The wage of sin is death. That is always true. That will never be changed. It's a spiritual principle. The wages of sin is death. That's Deuteronomic theology. But there's grace. And that's opening up the box. That's saying God can do whatever he wants to do, whenever he wants to do it, however he wants to do it, and he can do all of that because he loves you. It's not because he's against you. It's not because he wants to punish you. It's not because you need to be punished. But it's because he is gracious towards you. And he is saying, this is going to be a green sticky note in Jerry's life. And he doesn't know it right now. But he's going to look back and he is going to say, I am thankful for that green sticky note. Because I am who I am because of that green sticky note. So Elihu is beginning to open that up for us. Thoughts, comments? Like I said, we got 8 minutes left. It's almost to the minute. We could go on if you want. Yeah, let's just go to 34. There's not too many left here. So let me start at verse 30. To turn back his soul from the pit, that the light of life may shine on him. Pay attention, Job, and listen to me. Be silent, and I will speak. If you have anything to say, answer me. Speak up, for I want you to be cleared. If not, then listen to me. Be silent, and I will teach you wisdom. And so in chapter 34, he's going to begin answering the second question. And I don't think it's wise for us to get into that right now. We won't have time. We'll have to cut it in two. But he's going to answer the question, God has found fault with me and treats me as an enemy. And he's going to begin answering that question in chapter 34. And 35, he's going to answer the question, I'm pure and without sin. So I think we should stop. Questions, thoughts, comments, queries, conundrums, confusions? Job is hard to read. Yes, it's very hard to read. And it just makes so much more sense when you understand how it's put together and what genre it is and what its purpose is and how these characters are brought out and their use. Might even come to like him. How about that? Oh, no. Oh, Elihu. Oh, okay. Well, he's got a lot more to say, so don't draw a conclusion yet. Yep. See, you're responding to the brashness of youth, aren't you? I know. Crazy Bible college kid coming back telling me everything and he thinks I don't know. Jerry still likes him. Jerry would in a day go for coffee with Elihu. Other comments? Okay. All right. Well, I hope that helps. Good. All right. Let me close in prayer. God, we're grateful to you that you had someone write this book for us. Thank you that we get to wrestle with these concepts, this theology, this question of who are you and who are we before you. And God, I thank you that you speak to us through it. God, thank you that you decided to give us snow just for a few minutes, and I'm glad that it wasn't more. Might be selfish, but God, anyway, thanks that we don't have to worry about driving home or driving anywhere. God, do keep us safe, continue to be at work in our life, and God, I ask that you would open our eyes and ears to see you in places we don't normally. So I ask this and I pray it in your name, Jesus. Amen.